And that's not there's no change there.
Thank you. Supervisor Smith, and then I'll take public comment.
Why don't we go ahead and I'll follow.
Ms. Roberts, please state your name for the record.
Wendy Roberts, and I'm putting my badge down because I'm not speaking as a member of the grand jury.
Okay.
I am speaking as a resident of the coast, and one of the things that I've found troubling as a property owner on the coast and as a resident of the coast for the last few years is the really disturbing lack of representation of our coastal communities in Ukiah. Our supervisors do what you can. Some of our supervisors have very specific personal agendas that I do not believe represent most of the residents of the coast. I think that others make a genuine effort to reflect diverse opinions. But that aside, one of the impediments to representation in countywide government is the Hill. We all know this. I am an advocate for leveling the playing field so that any representative in this county has the same economic consequences of serving. You can't erase the Hill. It's exhausting, we know that. Boonville's an easy drive and a beautiful drive, but the coast and Laytonville, they're beautiful, but they're very challenging physically. They're challenging from a safety standpoint. Grand jurors and all jurors do not get paid. We get a modest stipend. That does set us apart from others. I frankly right now cannot look a friend in the face and say, I really encourage you to serve for free on the grand jury. It's going to cost you physically, mentally, and financially, but go for it. For me, it's been a 35 to 45 hour a week job. I take this very seriously. I believe our supervisors do. And I advocate for policies that do level the economic playing field. I have no respect for people who abuse policies. That does not work for me. We don't set our policies, you do. I believe you should set them fairly and abide by them. That is an issue, it's a personal issue, not a grand jury issue. I think we should all do that. But in this particular matter, I think that personalities aside, current jurors and future jurors on the coast and in the other outlying areas, this is not a coastal issue and it's not altogether a weather issue. It's just a long, hard drive, and spending the night is going to have minimal impact. People who live nearby are not going to choose to do it, and people who live far away will save considerable mileage and wear and tear. Every time I have paid personally for a motel room, this county has gotten a minimum of about 5 to 6 hours of computer time out of me instead of driving back and forth. I want my areas represented. I want Laytonville represented. Let's just have fair, reasonable policies and keep the personalities out of this.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Other members of the public, please step forward. State your name for the record and try and keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Hello, Supervisors. I'm Marshall Saya. I was interviewed by the grand jury last year. I would like to see you implement policies that are transparent and equal for everyone that's employed at the county level. I would also like to see personalities left out of it, and the Hill is a major issue. The only time we've ever seen anybody from Ukiah, much less a grand jury member, is when there's something going on. So anything that you can do to level the playing field, like this young lady said, I think it's extraordinarily important that the grand jury be encouraged to be able to come down to Gualala and not discouraged. And in our case, telling them they can't spend the night after they've been there all afternoon interviewing me and other members of my community is tantamount to telling them we don't want you back there, because it is a tough drive, as you all know, going all the way over the hill. And Boonville is a piece of cake, David. It really is, compared to doing Gualala for the last 6 months like I have.
Thank you, Mr. Saya. Other members of the public to speak to this item? Okay. Closing public comment, back to Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points. I think it's clear what we're voting on today, and as Council said, this has been actually a component, I believe, that is in the supervisor's travel policy with respect to the overnight. So I think that there was a lot of effort that went into revising that policy, and take it from someone who has had to do that drive repeatedly after many long days and evenings. I certainly supported that policy, and I think that seeing it here is fine. As Supervisor Pinch has said, and as members of the public have said, it levels the playing field, it makes it consistent. So I think that is something that we want to support, and unlike meetings that can be called off, the Board of Supervisors, to my knowledge, doesn't call off meetings for weather, and we never have. I mean, it's up to the coastal and the distant representatives to somehow make their way there one way or another. And I'm glad the sheriff is not in the room, because there was a recent time that despite the chains are required signs on Highway 20, I just had faith in my all-wheel drive vehicle that I had to get to replace the one I had because of the weather that I had to drive through and it not being safe, which is what I did last year. And I persevered, even though technically I probably shouldn't have, because it said chains are required now, because there was snow on the ground and it was for many miles. So I persevered even though other people were turning around. Supervisors don't really have an option in terms of that. I mean, you really need to show up, and I felt it was my obligation and my duty to do so even under those circumstances. So I did. But I think the overnight option is something that we ought to have in place for people that conduct business, and those expenses need to be covered, and we need a consistent policy. So I think that is fine. I think the difference, or the issue that Supervisor Colfax raises, though, is an issue, because what we have here is we have basically an amalgam of a policy, if you will. We have the overnight component, I believe, and I think council confirmed this, comes from the Board of Supervisors policy. However, the meal reimbursement component comes from the employee's policy. Those are two different policies. So basically, the grand jury's policy addresses both of those. So maybe Supervisor Colfax, to his point, maybe what we need to have a consistency of the meal reimbursement policy for the Board of Supervisors, because we don't have that. And it was consistently stated that supervisors are not reimbursed for meals, and we are not. If we have long committee meetings, or you just have that office work that you're trying to maximize your time here. Sometimes I've been here till 9 or 10 o'clock at night working, and you're not reimbursed for meals. You're just not. So I think there's a difference, because it does reference grand jurors shall also receive reimbursement for meal expenses at rates set for county employees. So really, I think it's accurate to say this policy is an amalgam policy. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I just think we need to make that point, because I think Supervisor Colfax was referencing this, but what you have here is components of two different policies, not one. So I just wanted to make that point. Maybe we need to revisit the Board of Supervisors policy and make it consistent with employees' policy. So that's something in the future we can take a look at. But I support this, the piece that we're voting on here today. As Supervisor Pinch has said, I concur. I think we need to support that and have it be consistent, and it's how you actually maximize people's efforts when you allow them to do additional work. It's what I've said since I've been here, is I put in long hours and I put in a lot of time in Ukiah, and staying overnight in Ukiah has allowed me to do that to a greater extent. And I think that's a good use of taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Colfax?
I agree with Supervisor Smith, and I appreciate this. To the county council, with the change that is being recommended here, can you compare this statement, conduct official